Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me All channel. So I figured it's finally time to discuss Life is Strange 2 episode 5 predictions, which ultimately means that we're discussing the game's ending. We're getting closer and closer to the big finale, to the last episode. It's been 4 episodes already, like even though it's been a year, almost a year, I think exactly a year, it passed like that. It's really odd how I think soon we will all be dead. I mean, I haven't really discussed my predictions when it comes to the game's ending, and to be honest, I'm not really certain where we're heading. That small teaser by the end of episode 4, usually based on these teasers you can figure out what's going to happen, sort of, even though they've been misleading as well. For example, episode 3 teaser, there was a voiceover. I think it was like a policeman, or I don't know who that guy was, because he never appeared in episode 4, so it's hard to say, really. Now episode 4 teaser, that was almost close to nothing. We reached the wall. So we reached the Mexican border, US-Mexico's border. That wall is not even there. I don't know, I think they overestimated Trump's politics. Fun fact, if he actually wanted to build that wall in that form and shape, that big and that long, he wouldn't afford it. He would have to hire immigrants, and that's so ironic. I don't want to get into politics. That wall is not there. From what I know, there's a fence, but in the game there's a wall, so let's stick to the game's logic, or else we won't even be able to discuss that without sounding a tad ridiculous. We reached the wall. We're finally there. Now there's so many questions. Daniel is clearly with us, but is Karen? I'm fairly certain our mother would drive us there. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to ignore some things, like the fact that adults seem to be on board with the whole Mexico plan, like all the adults that we meet along the way, like Brody. I think even our grandparents, they just seem to be on board with the Mexico plan, as if it was doable, or possible to execute, or not dangerous. I'm gonna have to ignore that. Let's just assume that that's a doable plan. We reached Mexico. How we did it, we don't know. I'm gonna assume that Karen helped us out. I'm not really sure where Karen is when it comes to motherhood right now. We know that she abandoned her family because that life wasn't meant for her. That life wasn't made for her. She preferred her own life. She didn't want to have a husband and kids. She decided so after having a husband and kids. I'm not sure where she is right now, if she wants to keep in touch with Sean and Daniel. I mean, she's the only parent left alive, so does she want to become the mother that they need, or maybe she wants to sort of give them up again, give them to the grandparents? I'm not really certain. Basically, I think the predictions discussion, that's gonna take at least a couple of parts, so let's make this like a series. I'm not going to limit myself to that one video, because I might come up with some different things, some different ideas, so stick around, stay on the channel, subscribe. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I just realized that you can see that I have been playing Man of Medan, Dark Pictures Anthology. The gameplay is on my channel, so you can also check it out. So let's go back to Karen. We don't know if she decided to help us out. Maybe she's gonna join us. Maybe she's gonna go to Mexico with us. Maybe she has some means, meaning money or like paperwork, that would help us out. For example, the act of ownership of that land that Esteban owned in Mexico, the one that Sean sort of wants to claim, because I think Sean's idea was basically coming to Mexico and being like, hey, this is my father's land, so I'm gonna live here now. It's not like anyone's gonna ask, hey, where's your paperwork or whatever, or like Esteban's will. I mean, Esteban's dead, so whatever he owned has to be inherited first. Never mind how we got there, with or without Karen. We're close to the border. Obviously we're gonna want to cross that border. Obviously it won't be as easy. You saw the wall in that teaser. That was a big ass wall. How are we going to cross it? I read some comments. Some of you claimed that Daniel will actually use his powers to destroy the wall, which is an idea, I suppose. That would be like a metaphorical version of what the creators wanna show us, so that there is no borders, there is no walls, we're all one. It doesn't matter if you're black or... Did I say black? It doesn't matter if you're black or white, or if you're from Mexico or whatever, we're all people. I suppose that would would be something that could happen, given the fact that it would be, like I said, a metaphorical way of showing that walls don't matter. But at the same time, I'm not really certain if this is what's going to happen. I think the main focus of the last episode will be our relationship with Daniel. It was there all along. What they've been doing in the previous episodes has to lead somewhere, and where it's leading is what Daniel became. We've been shaping him. We've been trying to make him either good or bad. He's been listening to us, or he hasn't. Basically, in the previous episodes, he's been doing whatever the fuck he wanted. If you have a look at each episode's ending, whatever happened by the end of episode, it was actually caused by him. So episode 1, he was the one that killed the policeman. Episode 2, he was the one that wouldn't listen to us and he insisted on going to the Christmas market. Episode 3, he attended the heist. Episode 4, he ended up in that church, so we had to get him out of there. It was all because of Daniel. On one hand, the developers are trying to tell us that it matters what we're doing with him, how we're shaping him, but on the other hand, it doesn't really matter because he's doing whatever the hell he wants anyway. Also, it's important to acknowledge that these really small, tiny decisions that you've been making when it comes to shaping Daniel, they did actually matter, which was nice. It was very complicated. Sometimes two people that played in a similar way had two different outcomes, so kudos to the developers. They actually made it work nicely, even though no one really knows how that works. Like, bottom line is Daniel will become independent in episode 5. Which leads me to that. Will we part our ways with Daniel in episode 5? I think there is at least a couple of possibilities when that might happen. I think there will be a couple of endings. I'm not sure if this is what they actually officially said, but I think there will be a couple of endings, not just two like in the original game. I'm thinking there might be an ending in which both us and Daniel end up together, even though generally speaking I don't really have high hopes when it comes to happy endings in that game. I'm not really certain where they're taking us, but I doubt it will be a happy place. Daniel's becoming an independent creature, so perhaps he will want to stay with his mother. Maybe he doesn't want to go to Mexico. I mean, Sean was the one closer to Esteban, I believe. Now that Daniel's found his mother, maybe this is where he wants to go. There's a couple of options for Daniel if you want to be reasonable about it. Going back to Karen, or going back to our grandparents, which would be a nice thing. I think this is the best outcome for Daniel, going back to the grandparents, because while Chris lives there, it was a nice place, generally speaking. He would be okay there. The developers said that they were loosely inspired by Of Mice and Men book. That's a book by John Steinbeck. I read it recently. If you haven't read it, so there's a couple of spoilers ahead for the book, not the game. I haven't read any leaks. I know that there were some leaks, but there's no major leaks, if I'm correct. So in that book, Of Mice and Men, two friends that are like brothers to each other are on a journey. They're sort of traveling from farm to farm looking for work. One of them, the bigger one, he's quite strong, physically speaking, but he's also slower, like he's not a fast thinker. There's probably some disability to it, even though the other guy, he's taking care of him and he's making sure that he doesn't do anything silly. He still makes mistakes from time to time, like he wants to cuddle a puppy but he accidentally kills him because he's too strong and he doesn't understand what he's doing. He's a liability, basically. So if you think about it, there's a pretty clear connection to Life is Strange too. Sean being the one friend that's taking care of the other, and Daniel being the strong one, except in that case we're talking about his powers, not his physical strength. Of Mice and Men didn't end well. That one friend that was taking care of the other one had to kill him because he couldn't control him. He couldn't control him. He did something terrible and he had to take care of it. It was pretty sad. I'm just thinking, what if that happens in Life is Strange too? I mean, I don't think that Sean's gonna have to kill Daniel, but I think that maybe he will understand that Daniel's a liability and it's best for him if he's hidden somewhere, and it's actually best for them if they split. So that's one possibility. Sean heading to Mexico alone, Daniel staying with Karen, Karen taking Daniel or driving him off to the grandparents. Daniel's too young to be charged anyway, and if it comes to that, I think Sean will take full responsibility for the policeman's death. Again, I've been talking about how I don't think it's reasonable that they're treated as suspects, because that would never happen, neither in the USA nor in Europe. If boys were missing from a place of a crime scene where a father died, they wouldn't be treated as suspects, they would be treated as victims. Like, you wouldn't know if there was someone else there, like a third party that caused the policeman's death and like took the boys. Again, I'm gonna have to follow up with the game's logic and assume that in the game they might actually be treated as suspects. I think they are from what we've heard. So that's another possibility. Sean getting arrested. He might claim that he killed that policeman because he's gonna want to protect Daniel. I don't know how. I mean, it's not really possible to explain that. If they're going to ask him, how did you kill that policeman? I mean, what is he going to say? Like, it was an uncontrollable power, some sort of an invisible force. But it might happen in the game. Sean might go through the whole juvenile trial. Perhaps people that we've met along the way will be actually witnesses, like Hank Stamper or Cassidy, maybe Lila if we called her. That's a possibility. There must be a reason we've been meeting these people along the way. Another possibility is that they were simply trying to show us that we meet people, we make friends, and then we move on. And I'm sort of leaning towards that possibility. During that juvenile trial, they might ask us about other things that we did. Like I said in my review video, I'm not really too thrilled with the fact that Sean stole a car because it sort of disregarded your whole way of treating Sean. For example, I was trying to keep him crimes free. I didn't steal the camping gear, but they sort of made me steal the car, which means that I committed a crime, and it just doesn't matter what I decided in the previous episodes. Now Sean is a thief and I couldn't really influence that. They might hold us responsible for these crimes that we committed. For example, stealing camping gear or the car. There's an achievement, I think it's called Boundaries. It kind of looks like a prison cell. There's this icon. This makes me think that we really will face a trial. And if you go back to episode 1, there was a trial there. Sean, Esteban and Daniel, they were discussing the Choco Crisp deal. It feels like it was foreshadowed.
Come on, Judge.
Shh. Let him decide.
Very often when I ask you about your ending predictions, you say that maybe we're gonna have to sacrifice Daniel. Now, I really doubt it. I think it's natural to think that because of the original game's ending, sacrifice Max or sacrifice Chloe or sacrifice Arcadia Bay. But having said that, they would never redo the same ending. It's not gonna be like sacrifice Sean or sacrifice Daniel. I mean, we might end up in a situation when one or the other life is actually on the line, but it will never be like in the first game. It won't be as obvious. We might get a possibility of giving Daniel up because of the fact that he's a liability, and boy, am I going to do it. I'm not the biggest fan of Daniel, but it won't be like sacrifice Daniel's life. If anything, I think it's Sean's life that might be on the line. Sean's story is pretty dramatic. He's still carrying around a lot of anger and pain after Karen left them. And if you think about it, there was a conversation also in episode 1 early on in the game about the dead raccoons. Daniel said something about one dead raccoon being another raccoon's brother. So I'm thinking there might be a death involved when it comes to the game's ending, except I really don't think it will be Daniel's life on the line. I think if anything it will be Sean's life on the line. I mean, if you look at his story, like I said, it's pretty sad. His mother gave him up, then his father died. Now, it's hard to imagine that he will be able to provide for Daniel, get a job and like make enough money for both of them to lead decent lives, given the fact that Sean is still just a kid and he's really angry and he's really sad and his story felt quite grim and quite dramatic. It would make sense if he actually died for whatever reason. He also mentioned death along the lines. Paid attention to that while playing. He often mentioned something like, I don't want to die a virgin or something. For a boy that age, he's often mentioning death. So again, it could be foreshadowing. Maybe it's just the way they wrote the script. End of the day, I think we'll either end up in Mexico with Daniel, in Mexico alone. Daniel will end up with Karen, with their grandparents. Sean might end up dead, unfortunately. This is also an option that I think is quite possible. We also might have to go through the juvenile trial. Now, I realize that all these possibilities that I listed, they're quite different from one another. So I doubt it will happen during the episode because it would be too much work to make it happen, to like develop all these outcomes. They're pretty different. What I'm talking about is the ending itself. I think we will spend a good amount of episode 5 trying to actually get to Mexico. It would be really nice if we reached Puerto Lobos. I'd love to see it, but then again, I always sort of imagined this to be like a metaphor of a journey. I always thought this was more about the road itself than reaching its destination, so I'm not really certain. I won't be surprised if we don't actually reach Puerto Lobos. Now I wonder, are we going to see any of the characters that we met? Someone told me that the developers stated that Lila is not coming back, which would be very sad. It would be a wasted opportunity. She was an interesting character. They sort of introduced her as a possible love interest, but we never had a chance to develop it. We had a chance of calling her, which we probably did, some of you and me as well. It would be really nice to see the reunion, except I'm not certain if it's going to happen. It just seems like they're sort of abandoning the characters that we meet along the way, which I don't really like, because I like to have same characters around and develop our relationships. Are we going to see Cassidy? I don't know. I don't think we will see Finn, since we said proper goodbyes when it comes to Finn. I'm fairly certain we will see our grandparents again, since they're involved in at least one of the possible endings. So these are my general ideas when it comes to the game's ending. I will still be discussing the game's ending, perhaps when I come up with something more specific. Stay tuned for that. Please remember to like a video and subscribe. Let me know your predictions in the comments section down below. We can discuss that. And stick around for more Life is Strange 2 theory videos. There's certainly more coming. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. This was Ola from Stop Me All channel. Bye.